The moment her silence can control your breathing, you are not in love. You are in captivity. And the most painful part is this. No one had to lock the door. You handed over the key yourself. You gave it away the first time you checked your phone every 2 minutes. The first time you reread an old message like it was a legal document. The first time you saw her online but not replying, and suddenly your chest got tight, your focus collapsed, and your entire day became a courtroom where you were both the judge and the accused. Welcome to Stoic Chisel. Before we go deeper, subscribe to the channel if you are done living like your peace depends on someone else's mood. Because today, we are not talking about how to make someone fear losing you. That is a childish question. We are talking about something far more dangerous. How to become the kind of man who does not lose himself when someone else becomes uncertain. Most men think they lose power when a woman pulls away. Wrong. You lose power when you panic because she pulled away. You lose power when her delayed response becomes stronger than your discipline. You lose power when her cold tone makes you abandon your routine, your work, your body, your standards, and your self-respect. And the strange thing is, you will call it love. You will say, I just care about her. But look closely. Is it care? Or is it fear wearing a romantic mask? Because real care is calm. Real care does not beg. Real care does not turn you into a man who studies punctuation like a detective. She used to send 3 hearts. Now she sent 1. She said goodnight differently. She watched my story but didn't reply. She was active 10 minutes ago. This is not connection. This is addiction. Modern dating has trained men to confuse attention with worth. A reply feels like oxygen. A like feels like hope. A voice note feels like proof that you still matter. And silence feels like death. But the Stoics would look at this and ask one brutal question. Why did you place your peace inside something you do not control? You do not control her mood. You do not control her attraction. You do not control whether she replies in 5 minutes or 5 hours. You do not control whether she wakes up tomorrow and feels the same way she felt yesterday. But you do control whether you collapse. You control whether you chase. You control whether you turn one cold message into a full surrender of your dignity. Picture a man sitting at work. He has deadlines, bills, responsibilities, a body that needs training, a future that needs building, but he cannot focus because one woman has not texted him back. His phone is face down on the desk, but his mind is face down with it. He opens the same app again and again. Nothing changes. But every time he checks, he gets smaller. Not because she did anything new, but because he keeps voting against himself. That is the hidden disease. It is not rejection. It is self-abandonment. And once you understand that, the whole game changes. You stop asking, how do I make her come back? You start asking, why did I leave myself so quickly? That is where Stoicism begins. Not in pretending you do not care. Not in acting cold. Not in playing games. Stoicism begins in the private moment, when your emotions rise like a storm, and you decide not to become their servant. You feel the anxiety. You feel the urge to text. You feel the need to explain, fix, prove, and chase. Then you breathe. You return to your work. You return to your body. You return to your purpose. You let the silence exist without rushing to fill it. Because silence is not always a threat. Sometimes silence is just a mirror. It shows you how much of your identity was built on being chosen. And in the next part, we need to talk about the lie that created this weakness in the first place. The lie that attention is the same thing as love. Attention is not love. Read that again, because most men do not suffer because they love too deeply. They suffer because they mistake being noticed for being valued. A fast reply makes them feel chosen. A slow reply makes them feel punished. A good morning text feels like security. A dry message feels like abandonment. And suddenly, their entire emotional life is being controlled by a screen that fits in their pocket. This is the sickness of modern dating. It teaches you to worship signals instead of studying character. She sends a heart, and you start imagining a future. She pulls back, and you start questioning your worth. She laughs at your message, and you feel powerful. She leaves you on read, and you feel invisible. But none of these things are love. They are fragments, moments, emotional weather. And a man who builds his identity on emotional weather will spend his whole life shaking under clouds he cannot control. The Stoic man understands something most men refuse to accept. Not everything that feels good is meaningful. Attention can feel good. Desire can feel good. Being wanted can feel good. But that does not mean it is stable. That does not mean it is honest. That does not mean it is love. Sometimes attention is just boredom with better lighting. Sometimes affection is just loneliness looking for a place to sit. Sometimes the person texting you every hour today will disappear next week when their emotions change. And if you are not grounded, you will follow every rise and fall like a slave tied to someone else's nervous system. Look the modern man at his job. He has a project due by 5. His manager is waiting. His bills do not care about his feelings. His body is tired because he slept late scrolling through old conversations. And instead of focusing, he is staring at his phone under the desk because she has not replied. He is physically in the office, but mentally he is begging at the door of someone else's attention. One message from her, and his energy returns. No message, and he starts sinking. Tell me honestly, is that love? Or is that emotional dependence wearing the perfume of romance? This is why the Stoics warned against placing your peace in externals, because anything outside your control can be taken, delayed, changed, misunderstood, or withdrawn. And when your peace depends on what can be withdrawn, you are not peaceful. You are temporarily comfortable. There is a difference. A man who understands this stops treating every message like a verdict. A delayed reply is not a command to chase. A cold tone is not a command to panic. A change in energy is not a command to abandon yourself. It is information, nothing more. It tells you something about the situation. It tells you something about her consistency. It tells you something about your own attachment. But it does not tell you your worth. That part is yours to protect, and this is where self-respect begins. You stop asking, why is she acting different? And you begin asking, why does her difference have so much power over me? That question is uncomfortable, but it is the doorway back to yourself. Because the truth is, many men are not chasing a woman. They are chasing relief, relief from loneliness. Relief from insecurity, relief from the fear that they are not enough unless someone keeps choosing them out loud. So they confuse constant contact with connection. They confuse anxiety with passion. They confuse uncertainty with chemistry. But love should not make you disappear from your own life. Love should not make your work weaker, your body softer, your discipline unstable, your mind frantic. The right connection adds warmth to your life, does not become the fire alarm inside your nervous system. So stop worshiping attention. Observe behavior. Watch consistency. Measure respect. Study peace. Because attention can be performed. Desire can be temporary. Words can be cheap. But character reveals itself in patterns. And once you stop feeding on little signals like a starving man, you become harder to disturb. You stop needing her to prove your value every few hours. You stop treating silence like an emergency. You stop negotiating with your own dignity for another dose of reassurance. But there is another trap waiting for men who begin to feel someone pulling away. They do not just chase. They explain. They defend. They write paragraphs. They turn their dignity into a courtroom speech. And that is where the next weakness begins. One of the fastest ways a man loses respect is by trying too hard to be understood. Not because communication is weak. Communication is necessary. But over-explaining is not communication. It is fear with better grammar. It is the sound of a man begging someone to approve of his boundaries. And most men do not even realize when they are doing it. They think they are being mature. They think they are being honest. They think, if I just explain myself clearly enough, she will stop pulling away. She will stop judging me. She will finally understand. But listen carefully. Some people do not misunderstand you because you failed to explain. They misunderstand you because your clarity threatens the access they used to have. A man says, I was busy. She says, oh, so now you don't have time for me. And right there, he has a choice. He can stand inside his own reality, or he can abandon it to manage her reaction. The anxious man starts typing. No, it's not like that. I was just working on this thing, and then my phone died, and then I had to help someone, and I didn't mean to make you feel ignored, and I promise I wasn't trying to be distant. Look at what just happened. He was not explaining his schedule. He was asking for permission to have one. He turned a simple truth into a courtroom defense. And every extra sentence made him smaller. The grounded man says, I was focused on something important. That is it. No panic. No performance. No desperate attempt to soften the truth until it becomes harmless. He does not say it to be cold. He says it because he knows a sentence can be complete without becoming an apology. This is the difference between clarity and weakness. Clarity speaks once. Weakness keeps talking until it feels accepted. The Stoic man does not live as a prisoner of other people's interpretations. He understands that being misunderstood is part of life. Being disliked is part of life. Being questioned is part of life. But betraying yourself every time someone reacts poorly, that is optional. And that is where many men destroy their own authority. They explain why they did not text. They explain why they need space. They explain why they have standards. They explain why disrespect bothered them. They explain the same boundary again and again until the boundary has no weight left. But a boundary that requires endless explanation is no longer a boundary. It is a request. And a request can be negotiated. Self-respect cannot. Think about the man drowning in debt. Every month, he tells himself he will finally take control. But the moment his friends invite him out, he explains. He says, I probably shouldn't. Maybe just this once. Then he spends money. He does not have to avoid feeling left out. He does the same thing in relationships. He knows what he needs. He knows what feels wrong. He knows when his peace is being disturbed. But instead of honoring that truth, he negotiates against himself because he is afraid of tension. That fear is expensive. It costs him money. It costs him focus. It costs him dignity. And eventually, it costs him the very respect he was trying to protect. Here is the rule. Explain when understanding is possible. Speak clearly when communication can build something, but do not explain endlessly to someone who benefits from your confusion. Do not defend your standards to someone who only respects them when they are convenient. Do not write paragraphs to prove that your peace matters. Live like it matters. If someone asks you a sincere question, answer with calm honesty. If someone twists your answer into guilt, stop feeding the courtroom. You are not on trial for having a life. You are not on trial for needing focus. You are not on trial for refusing to chase chaos. A man becomes powerful when he no longer needs every person to agree with his self-respect. He simply practices it. Quietly, consistently, without begging for applause. And once you stop explaining yourself into weakness, something uncomfortable happens. There is space. There is silence. There is a gap where your old panic used to live. And that silence will test you more than any woman ever could. Silence is not powerful because it makes someone else uncomfortable. Silence is powerful because it proves you are not terrified of yourself. Most men cannot sit in silence. Not real silence. Not the silence after a cold reply. Not the silence after she pulls back. Not the silence after you say what you mean, and there is no immediate reassurance coming back to save you. That is when the weak man starts reaching. He sends another message, then another. Then he checks if she is online. Then he tells himself, I just want clarity. But what he really wants is relief. He does not want truth. He wants the anxiety to stop, and this is why silence becomes the first battlefield of self-command. The Stoic man does not use silence as punishment. He does not disappear to make someone suffer. He does not play childish games to create panic. He becomes silent because not every emotion deserves an action. Not every fear deserves a message. Not every uncomfortable feeling deserves to be solved immediately. Sometimes the most masculine thing you can do is nothing. Not because you are passive, but because you are disciplined. There is a difference between ignoring someone and refusing to be dragged by your own panic. There is a difference between being cold and being centered. There is a difference between punishing her with distance and protecting yourself with space. A boundary is not a weapon. A boundary is the shape of your self-respect. It tells the world, this is where I remain whole. But many men treat boundaries like suggestions. They say, I do not like being disrespected. Then disrespect happens, and they explain. Then it happens again, and they negotiate. Then it happens again, and they call it patience. No, sometimes what you call patience is just fear dressed up as virtue. A real boundary does not need anger to be real. It does not need shouting. It does not need drama. It only needs consistency. If someone keeps bringing chaos into your life, you step back. If someone uses silence to control you, you do not chase the silence. If someone only respects you when you are useful, available, and easy to manage, you stop making access cheap. This is emotional detachment. And do not confuse detachment with not caring. Detachment is not the absence of love. It is the absence of slavery. It means you can care deeply without handing someone the remote control to your nervous system. You can miss her and still not text. You can want her and still not beg. You can feel pain and still not betray your standards. Think about the man who panic sells in the financial market. The market dips. Red numbers flash. Everyone online screams that everything is collapsing. So he sells from fear. Then the market recovers without him. He did not lose because the market moved. He lost because he had no discipline inside the movement. Relationships expose the same weakness. Her energy dips. Her tone changes. Her attention becomes uncertain. And suddenly, he emotionally panic sells his dignity. He apologizes for things he did not do. He overgives. He over-explains. He abandons his position just to feel safe again. But a grounded man understands that not every dip is a disaster. Sometimes you observe. Sometimes you wait. Sometimes you let reality reveal itself. You do not chase every emotional fluctuation. You do not become a puppet of every mood. You return to your body. You return to your work. You return to the quiet discipline that existed before she arrived. This is how you become difficult to control. Not by becoming cruel. Not by becoming unavailable. But by becoming anchored. The world can be loud. Her silence can be loud. Your fear can be loud. But your center must be louder. And when you learn to stand there, calm and unshaken, you realize something most men never understand. The goal is not to make her chase you. The goal is to stop chasing yourself out of your own life. Because once your silence becomes discipline, your boundaries become real. And once your boundaries become real, the final transformation begins. You stop living as a man who reacts to desire. You become a man with direction. A man without direction will turn desire into a religion. He will worship whoever gives him attention. He will mistake chemistry for destiny. He will call obsession loyalty, and he will build an altar out of one person's approval, then wonder why he feels empty when they stop showing up. This is where most men are secretly broken, not because they love too much, but because they have too little holding them together. When a man has no real mission, no structure, no discipline, no standards, and no private relationship with his own soul, one woman's attention becomes his entire weather system. If she is warm, he feels alive. If she is cold, he feels worthless. If she comes close, he relaxes. If she pulls away, he collapses. That is not romance. That is emotional poverty. And when you are emotionally poor, you will accept almost anything that feels like affection. You will tolerate confusion. You will tolerate inconsistency. You will tolerate disrespect with a smile, because somewhere deep down, you are afraid that, if you lose this one source of warmth, you will have to return to the cold room of your own unfinished life. That is the brutal truth. Many men are not chasing women. They are running from themselves. They are running from the body they have neglected, the debt they keep avoiding, the discipline they keep postponing, the purpose they keep pretending they will start someday, the loneliness they keep numbing with messages, scrolling, fantasies, and emotional drama. So when someone attractive gives them attention, it feels like salvation. But no person can save a man from a life he refuses to build. The Stoic man understands this. He does not make another human being the center of his existence. He loves, he desires, he connects. But he does not kneel before desire. He knows that attraction is powerful, but temporary. Emotion is real, but unstable. Longing is human, but not always wise. So he returns to what is his body, his work, his word, his habits, his courage. His ability to choose what is right even when his emotions are begging him to choose what is easy. That is direction. Direction is not just having a goal. It is having an inner compass that still works when temptation gets loud. It is waking up and training even when your heart is heavy. It is paying the bill you avoided instead of buying another distraction. It is putting the phone down when your mind wants one more hit of reassurance. It is refusing to turn another person into medicine for a wound you have not faced. Because the strongest man in the room is not the one who pretends he does not care. It is the one who can care deeply and still remain governed by reason. He can want her without needing her. He can miss her without chasing her. He can be hurt without becoming pathetic. He can be rejected without becoming bitter. He can walk away without hatred, because his peace was never rented from her approval. That is what makes him unshakable. Not mystery, not games, not pretending to be busy, but a life so rooted in purpose that no single person can pull him out of himself. And ironically, this is what makes him magnetic. Because people can feel when your world does not depend on them. They can feel when your attention is chosen, not begged for. They can feel when your presence comes from abundance, not hunger. So stop trying to become the man someone fears losing. Become the man who no longer fears being left. Build a life that can survive silence. Build a mind that can survive uncertainty. Build a body, a purpose, and a code strong enough that rejection does not send you crawling back to your weakest self. Because once a man has direction, desire no longer owns him. And when desire no longer owns him, love becomes cleaner, calmer, stronger, freer. That is the final lesson we need to bring home. So here is the lesson. You do not become powerful by making someone afraid to lose you. You become powerful when you stop being afraid to lose someone who requires you to abandon yourself. That is the difference between ego and Stoicism. Ego says, I want them to regret losing me. Stoicism says, I want to remain whole whether they stay or leave. And that is the standard. Not coldness, not revenge, not emotional games, wholeness. Because the real test of a man is not how confident he sounds when he is wanted. The real test is what happens when attention fades, when the messages slow down, when the energy changes, when the person you wanted begins to feel uncertain. Do you collapse? Do you chase? Do you explain your dignity away? Or do you return to yourself? That is where your philosophy becomes real. Not in quotes, not in books, not in pretending to be detached. But in that private moment when your chest tightens, your hand reaches for the phone, your mind creates 100 stories, and you choose discipline over desperation. You choose silence over panic. You choose standards over approval. You choose peace over chaos. A woman may leave. A relationship may end. A person may misunderstand you. But none of that has the power to destroy a man who has already decided not to betray himself. So build that man. Build the body. Build the routine. Build the purpose. Build the calm. Build the kind of life that does not collapse, because one person became inconsistent. And now I want to ask you something that will divide the room. Which is stronger, the man who fights to keep someone at all costs, or the man who can walk away the moment his peace is no longer respected? Choose your side in the comments and defend it. And if this video you see yourself differently, subscribe to Stoic Chisel. Because the man you are becoming